Take note, Samsung, this is how you make a foldable. This is what the Z Fold 4, in my eyes, should have been hardware-wise. So this Mix Fold 2 is not, sadly, a global phone yet. I hope it will be. If Xiaomi is watching this video, please do release this fantastic phone. This hardware needs to be everywhere in the world, but so far you need to import it. So I ended up buying this model here from Trading Shenzhen. I use them a lot, really good company if you want to get devices that you can't get anywhere else, you can import one in. So this model, you probably know all the specs. I'm not going to read them all out, but I will go over them a little bit in this video too. So this is my first impressions, unboxing, hands-on, but a in-depth detailed look. The phone comes nicely presented in a foldable box, funny that, and of course it is open once you pull it out, just like other foldables, they ship open to reduce the damage. We do get a Type A to Type C cable, typical Xiaomi cable. Our charger, this one is 2-prong, 67 watts. It takes about 50 minutes to charge it, and we get a case that does have a kickstand that feels quite stiff, really good. It doesn't rattle about. And we also do get a Type C to 3.5mm adapter in the box, which is great to see. Okay, so let's look at this hardware. So the first thing I noticed about it, that when I saw the press images when they launched it, was the camera module to me looks okay, but why is it so high up? And maybe they made it squared off, or I think they did, for that when you actually place it down on a table or something like that, that it's not going to rock around. So we've got our outer screen here. Now it's a normal size, 6.5 inches, and so far I really like it. It's quite light for a foldable. It's 262 grams. So the thickness, we're looking at 11.2 millimeters when it is folded, and I'll just compare that very quickly to my Huawei Mate X2, and you're probably thinking, well, why aren't you comparing this to the Fold 4? Well, I don't have a Fold 4, but if someone wants to send me one, a loan unit, that'll be fine, of course. I can do some comparisons if you wish, but see the difference there. This is quite chunky, and to me, up until now, this was pretty much still the best hardware, along with, say, the Vivo X Fold. So when you open it up, it's only then a very, very slim 5.4 millimeters, which is crazy. Look how thin that really is. We've got capacitive, always on fingerprint reader, volume up and down. This is a metal frame around the outside that is rounded. It feels really good in hand. Now, the Fold, it doesn't feel like I can easily just snap this in half or bend it. What I have noticed, it seems to bend outwards a little. See that it's not actually perfectly flat level. If I move it just a little, about there is, it's spring-loaded the mechanism. So when you go to open it up, you'll feel that just kind of pops open and then springs into place. Now the crease, you can see it. See, it's visible just at certain angles, but when you're normally looking at it, like now, you're not actually going to see that. So both the outer screen and the inner, they are 100 and 20 hertz refresh rate. So very, very fast here. Now I've got the apps drawer open. So you'll have whatever you have on the inner screen or the outer screen, you can have it in the settings to just be the same. It's going to stretch it out and open that up again. So that mech feels really good. When I open that, but it springs open, great feel to it. That means you cannot just prop it up like you could with, say, a Galaxy Z Fold 4, right? You could set it up like that. This one, it wants to be open or it wants to be closed. Now, when it's closed, you see, take note, Samsung, that it is completely flat here. It's closed because it's got that teardrop design that pulls in the screen a little bit, and that allows them to actually do this. So here at the top, we've got an IR transmitter. You don't normally see this on especially a flagship device like this. Our microphone, loudspeaker, and then our SIM tray, it takes 2 nanosims. So compare that with another one here, which was this ahead of its time too when this first came out. So the Huawei, the Mate X2, this folds flat too as well, where Samsung, they're still not doing that. They're kind of behind in the hardware, but you see that one side's a lot more thicker than these ones are the same here. So that's why it's pretty good there. So the back has that frosted glass to it. It does pick up smudges and fingerprints. It looks a lot more modern now compared to my Huawei Mate X2. This one has this spring-loaded kind of mechanism as well. Nice magnets when you've got it, and it opens up, and the crease is still holding up very well. It's a little bit more noticeable compared to now the Mix Fold 2 here. You see that one at an angle, yeah, you can see it, and then this one there. Noticeable the creases, but only really, again, when you look at them at certain angles. So it's plastic around the outside, the bezel here, and the screen resolution that we've got with this particular screen here is 1914 by 2160. Now, it can go up to, they say, 1000 nits brightness, but I've noticed that, yes, it can get really bright, but I've noticed that when it starts to be pushed hard, that is overpowering my camera settings right now. It's super bright. It will dim down, especially outdoors. When it's pushing that 1000 nits, it's only a short period that it can do it. The same as the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4, 3, 2. They all do it. They dim down eventually the screens, as you can see now, which is it's a bit of a pain there, but it's what it is in such a thin device, unfortunately. So down here with our Type-C port, so far, well, I've tested out a couple of adapters. I don't seem to be able to get any video out of this. You can see the antenna lines, metal frame here, squared off. That's the bottom speaker. So just exceptional build quality. This is the Xiaomi that I love, the one that innovates a little bit, that takes some risks with their products, not just the constant rebranding of Poco, Redmi devices. No, this is where they're at with a flagship here, something different that really, to me, now has the best in terms of hardware when it comes to foldables. So we do have the IMX766 50 megapixel flagship sensor that is now in like about 10 different flagship phones now, or 15 probably. It's not a bad sensor at all. Optical image stabilization, electronic for video. We have an interesting choice here that they've gone with a 2x optical 8 megapixel camera. Obviously, that's all that they could fit in with the restrictions on the space. After all, it is very thin, but they had to bulge this camera module out approximately 3.5, almost 4 millimeters, just to cater for this sensor right here. Now, why I say that's an interesting choice? Well, most high megapixel count cameras now, like say 64 megapixels or 50, when you take a 2x digital shot, they are normally probably better than 2x optical because we have a slightly larger sensor, larger pixels, and normally slightly better optics, right? But we'll see later on with my samples. Then a 13 megapixel ultra wide with this. So we do have, yes, Leica branding. They are co-engineering this setup. Well, it's co-engineered with Xiaomi and Leica, which is great to see that partnership. And then just up the top here, a little hard to see, but right there, there's a little text there, Harman Kardon. Sound is by them. So they've tuned these speakers. The front-facing camera, this one's 20 megapixels. Now, we're seeing this sensor used and abused by Xiaomi, but it doesn't matter because you can, of course, turn on the camera. You can set it then to flip around, and if you open it right up, well, I need to have it open first and then go into the camera flip mode here. So, okay, when I select that, you'll see that it will now tell me to flip it over, and this is how you can, of course, use this then the rear cameras, the 50 megapixel, to be your selfie cam, and you're just going to get way better quality than any front-facing cutout in-screen camera that you would have here. And you can do all the options that you normally would. You've even got access to the ultra-wide, the zoom camera, portrait, all of the modes that you get, of course, normally. It's just now that we've got the preview here, and we flip it around. So this is great for people that vlog a lot. So now, according to my scales, it's 266 grams for the Mix Fold 2. But what about the Huawei Mate 2X? Well, that's 301. So a big difference there in weight. And comparing it to other devices here, so the Xiaomi 12 Ultra, that's 227. So hey, that's not that much of a difference, is it? And then an iPhone 13 Pro Max, it comes out at, wow, 253. It's always been a chunky, heavy device, of course. So close in terms of weight. And where on earth is my Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra? Here it is. So we'll see how heavy is that phone. So that's 229. So when you factor that in, that this weight it's absolutely amazing considering it is a foldable. And then size-wise, just to look at it briefly here, you can see that there's not that much of a difference when looking at, say, the iPhone 13 Pro Max compared to it. So if you put it side by side, you see that, well, it really is not that much of a difference, the thickness there. Sure, it's a little bit chunkier, but it is a foldable device. So that's really excellent coming from Xiaomi, just how thin they've been able to get this Mix Fold 2. So this inner screen is a real stunner. It's very bright, it's sharp, and it's responsive to touch. And running my finger over where the crease is, you feel it a little bit, but it's not really too bad. So I am using Gboard here, so I can happily type on this without really any problems. You can resize this too with the customization you get with Google Gboard. So obviously, yes, it does have Google support. Gestures are working really well. Folding it, this is one thing I love about this, and then the Mix Fold and also the Huawei Mate X2. The reason why it replaced my Z Fold 3 is we've got a full normal size outer screen. So if I just bring that back up again and just type and show you that, we have right here our typical keyboard. So none of this garbage that we have with the Samsung of a super narrow, terrible screen, which is approximately about there, right? It's more cramped and I had a lot more typos. I find that typing now on this is pretty much just like typing on any other phone, although I just had a typo there. So that's just me with poor typing skills. So it is a lot better and great to use. So let's just go into a few of the settings here with this display, just to show you. So you don't sadly have DC dimming. Now, I haven't really noticed any problems with flicker or banding. I'm not seeing it in person. Sometimes with my camera settings, if I don't have a certain shutter rate, it might show a banding coming up. So I'll just open that up so we can see that on our 8.02-inch screen. So with the display, you get your refresh rate option, obviously, but we don't have here 90 Hertz. Now, that would have been perfect for me. So we've just got 60 or 120. I would have loved to have seen 90. It's a good sweet spot for battery saving, but it's still fluid. Default will be dynamically scaling, and it's not going to be pumping out 120 frames per second. If it's a static image, it will just be about 1 frame per second or so, which is good for battery saving in the long term because these foldables, battery life normally isn't that good. So you can see here that I'll just show you a couple of sample images from my photos that I've been taking already, that it is a really nice screen. It's a stunner, and it's basically a tablet, of course, in your pocket, and if you wanted it, then you've got it just as a normal phone for when you are out and about. The Mix Fold 2 has face unlocking, which is using the outer camera, of course. There is no inner camera, and you wouldn't be using the one on the rear because you'd have to open it up and then flip it around. It just wouldn't make any sense. So to use that is just either in the options, you can set it as press in first to unlock, or I've set it to just touch. So you simply touch it, it unlocks. And I'll do that again, 1, 2, 3. You see, it's not the quickest, it's the animation that lets it down, but what it lacks in that animation speed is it is accurate. It's much better than the in-screen fingerprint readers I find because of the accuracy. It's more consistent and it's just working really well. Face unlocking too seems to be working fine, but do remember it's not as secure as the fingerprint reader or using a pin. Now, the software, that's one area for Xiaomi has been a bit troublesome in the past, especially with the launch of MIUI. Whenever they have a new major version, it's always so buggy and problematic. Like MIUI 13, when I first experienced it, for me was terrible. It was an absolute mess. It's so much better now. And of course, here we've got Android 12, MIUI 13, but it's MIUI 13 for the Mix Fold 2. So we can launch applications here in separate windows. So this is it is really a multitasker's dream phone. Well, other foldable phones too as well. So I can have here, for example, I do have Genshin Impact that I can load up. You can even run a game. So when you do something really demanding, this can sometimes impact the performance, especially a console level graphics game like that one. Now, the gallery is very, very smooth. I've really had no problems. That's as you'd expect it to be with this spec, Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. Very smooth, 12 gigabytes of RAM. You can resize these windows, but not all applications will actually like to be in these windows, okay? So it's not going to work with everything out there. There's some limitations with this ROM, of course, and that is that it's a Chinese ROM. So we've got English and Chinese. There are no other languages, sadly. And I don't know if this is going to get a global release. I don't believe it will. But Google Play, you just install the Play APK, log in with your credentials, and away you go. That's good. Now, another couple of things I wanted to point out, that Twitter performance, here, scrolling seems to be fine, but you see that it does these little stutters. So the scrolling performance for me could be certainly a lot better. I have noticed that when using it on the outer screen, you see it swaps over and resizes just like the Z Fold 4 series would. Here, you'll notice that the scrolling seems to be sometimes a little worse off, although it's not too bad here. But I've seen this with some other devices that Twitter can sometimes be a little bit funny at 120 Hertz. running 120 frames per second. So notifications are coming through for things like WhatsApp, Twitter's working well, everything apart from you can't run Chrome, but you can run Chrome Beta. That's okay. And this one is a bit of an annoyance for me considering how this screen is, that it's a nice big 8.02-inch screen, but we cannot run Netflix in full HD. Even though this has a widevine level 1 cert, it's stating here, according to the app Netflix, that it's a widevine level 3 cert. And so playback resolution is standard definition. Over to the audio quality. So I've placed a voice call on it and it sounds just like any other phone. Now it does seem to have a proper working proximity sensor on the outer screen. I know in the past I've had issues with just like emulating it with software. Well, doesn't seem to be happening here. And of course you can use that 3.5mm adapter to Type-C, and these do sound really good. So I've got the speakers, which are Harman Kardon tuned. We've got dual speakers, so they're on this side here. There's one at the bottom, the other at the top. I've got them at 100%, and I'm just split screen multitasking here. I'm loading Genshin Impact, but I've got one of my shorts here, and I'll give you a sample of it at 100% volume. I have noticed that sometimes the speakers can crackle a little bit if you push them to 100%. And gaming on this screen is absolutely fantastic. It's super immersive. Now, I just saw a pause there, a bit of a stutter. I am running this on the absolute top settings, Genshin Impact. So 60 frames per second on highest. And it is really nice. The speakers are at the maximum. Push your luck. And they seem pretty good, but again, I wish they were just a little bit louder. Now, one thing to note, this phone doesn't feel top heavy. It does feel, to me, quite well balanced, even though, okay, we've got the camera module, should make one half a little bit heavier, right? But I'll just show you that it seems to be pretty well balanced, just holding my fingers out. It doesn't feel like it's going to tip over. And that's great that when you're holding it like this, I still can't get over how light this feels in hand. It just screams of quality too. It doesn't feel like it's light and it's cheap, that you're easy to be able to damage it, they'd be able to bend it in half quite easily. You probably would if you forced it really hard, of course, but it feels to me like a quality unit here. And gaming, really nice, really enjoyable. But I have noticed that just around this area where the chipset is, it's going to get a little warm when you game. And I've already seen it get up to about 45 degrees Celsius. So what I'll do now is play for about 30-40 minutes and I'll see just how hot is the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2 going to get. Oh dear, that did not go too well. I was about 20 minutes into the game and it overheated on the top settings of Genshin Impact. It was getting quite hot just around here. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to record that, but it was around about 48 degrees on the back of it, so it's getting a little toasty and around the frame here. So sadly, the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 is still an incredibly hot chipset, just like its predecessor. If anyone says otherwise, clearly they just haven't tested it properly, or they are shilling for Qualcomm just to say how amazing it is when it's not really any better than the previous one, sadly. So the cooling is, well, just not up to the job for intense gaming. So if you're going to be gaming for hours on end at top settings, this is not the foldable for it. So as I mentioned with the clip when we looked at Netflix, that even though it's got a widevine level 1 cert, for some reason Netflix is not validating that. It doesn't like it. There's something going on. It just will not show anything in full HD plus resolution. So you can probably use G-Space to get around that issue. Camera 2 API, that's full level 3, which is great. So you can use Gcam ports with that 50 megapixel camera and see if you can get better results or just, well, different results, something that's not, say, the Leica filters and other bits and pieces. So it does pass the SafetyNet check here, so that's good. So you can use banking applications. It does, of course, have NFC with it. And you've got this option too with certain applications that you can stretch it out to the full area or run in an active area with borders when you're running it in portrait mode, not in landscape, which I currently have it. So it's nice that they give us these options, of course. The internal storage is very quick. I've got 512 gigabytes here, and that's more than enough for me. And look at those speeds. They are sufficient enough. Not the fastest I have seen, but still excellent. UFS 3.1 spec, of course. And very quickly, here is AnTuTu. an absolute monster of a score, but this is a short-term burst benchmark that only takes about 10 minutes. It pushes it hard, but it's not pushing everything hard like games do. And this is where I ran into this problem that you'll see later on when I go into the gaming test. A bit of a spoiler here, but the phone ended up overheating on me. Really disappointing. So in my experience, the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1s, I've now tested about 4 of them in 4 different devices. They're no better than the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 or the Snapdragon 888. Still too hot, still overheat, still run into a lot of throttling and problems, unless it is a fan-cooled gaming phone, like the Red Magic series. They're the only phones for me that can game continue without running into this problem. It overheated that bad that it actually forced me out of the game. Genshin Impact closed it, and I was, yes, running the maximum top settings. Some people defend these brands and say that you should never run the games in the top settings because it's just too demanding. Well, you're paying for it, the top spec. Why can't you use it? It's like getting a V8 and you just want to drive around town with that brand new car and you can only do 50 when it can do 200. So you want to do 200 here. Well, at least I do. Here's a preview of what the cameras can do. So this is the outer screen 20 megapixel camera, and we've just got 1080p 30 or 60 with electronic image stabilization. But of course you can use the rear cameras, which I'll swap over to now. If you need to vlog, you can get 4K and even 8K with optical image stabilization and electronic. And then of course this is the 50 megapixel camera, now using it as a vlogging camera. So we get electronic image stabilization, the image quality a lot better than that 20 megapixel front facing camera. My only complaint is so far is the audio bitrate. Come on Xiaomi, it's 96 kilobits per second. Yet some of their low-end phones are using 256 kilobits per second, which just makes no sense. It is a simple line of code that they need to change, so I hope that they're going to correct the audio bitrate so we can have better audio quality out of this Fold 2 here from Xiaomi, the Mix Fold 2. So I can swap over to the ultra wide. I simply need to just pull back on the screen there to then go over to that 13 megapixel ultra wide camera, which has electronic image stabilization. You get a lot more in the shot, as you can see, and I'm waiting for this big storm to roll in eventually here, so I'm quickly rushing around to get some photos before it starts to rain on me, because this doesn't have an official IP rating. I don't really want to get it wet. So as you can see from those camera samples, that I think the cameras do need a lot of optimization. It's very hit and miss. We've got poor audio bitrate in video. The video colors with the main camera are very strange. Now I double checked it, I did not have some sort of Leica filter enabled. You saw when I swapped over to the ultra wide, it looked completely different. It was cooler colors, more neutral, and then with the main cameras was very warm and quite oversaturated. I didn't like the look of it at all. I didn't think that was that good. The camera stills then, a little disappointing. Portrait photos are quite hit and miss. When you looked at those samples there, you probably saw that some of them looked a little bit soft. Yeah, I think there's definitely room for a lot of improvement there when it comes to the camera department. So hardware-wise, it is very, very nice. So the Fold, the way that it feels in hand is really good. So thin too, and the weight is about that almost of an iPhone 13 Pro Max. I know there are different types of phones, but it's really impressive what they've been able to do there with the weight and just a really good build quality. Fingerprint reader is working really well for me, no problems with it. Everything I do on the Mix Fold 2 here is quick and snappy. and the gaming performance was okay until it overheated. So that's a big one. So the cons for me are there's no video out, no stylus support, it overheats. We have the poor audio bitrate, the cameras are a little bit hit and miss there. So for some people, they could actually be some major cons there. The pros, well, we've got 5G support here in Europe, seems to be working on the 5G bands, well, at least that they use here in Spain with my carriers. LTE band 20 is also working just fine, which is good. And, oh, and almost forgot too, one of the cons is Netflix is only in standard definition for some reason, even though we do have the wideband level 1 cert. So the hardware is definitely there. Software-wise, there's still a bit of work to do, optimization. And if they do bring this out globally, I would love to see a lot of those problems there corrected. So upping that audio bitrate, improve the cameras, maybe even add video out support, but probably won't come in with this model. Maybe in the Mix Fold 3, who knows? Maybe in the Xiaomi 13 or 14 model will eventually bring it to us. So it's a bit of a long video, sorry about that, but I did want to cover a lot. So any potential buyers out there know all the pros and cons of such an amazing hardware-wise foldable that is the Xiaomi Mix Fold 2.